being a producer is a solution-driven job because nothing ever goes your way. The day doesn't take, the day takes longer. The weather throws you a loop. There's something wrong with your equipment. Your actor doesn't want to do that. Your location doesn't work. So you have to be able to stay cool and stay calm and try to figure out a solution that's going to try to hit as many of the boxes as you can at that moment. And that's what really intrigued me about producing.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Hassiem Mohammed, and you are listening to The Actor's Instrument, Tools for the Long Game. On this podcast, I've made it a point to bring in guests who can give us insight into different areas of the business, from casting directors to agents, managers, directors. I think it's important that we understand the entire scope of what our industry has to offer in order to be successful in this business. We got to know what business we're in, right? So joining us this week on The Actor's Instrument is Alec Chorches, studio film and TV producer. Alec is known for his work on all three of Dick Wolf's FBI series, serving as associate producer, co-producer, and producer across FBI, FBI Most Wanted, and FBI International. Concurrently, he worked on multiple other projects in the role of production consultant and post-production supervisor. In addition to the FBI universe, some of Alec's credits include Netflix's I.O., starring Anthony Mackie, Netflix's Juanita, starring Alfre Woodard, and Prime Video's Lorena, executive produced by Jordan Peele. Alec, man, that's a resume. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm very excited.
Me too. So for the folks at home, I did an episode of FBI, I think it was 2023. And so I knew I wanted to bring a producer onto the show, and I was like, who should I reach out to? And I went through my resume, and I was like, well, who worked on these shows? And as I was digging through the FBI IMDb, your name came up, and I reached out, and yeah, just so grateful that you responded. And it's really cool that, I had the opportunity to work on this show that you've had such a hand in bringing to life.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you reaching out, and I'm very excited to talk to you about that and other things that you do and that I do.
Amazing. Let's start with what you do. So I've had, indie film producers on the show before. I've had a Broadway Tony Award-winning producer on the show before, but no one from truly the meat of Hollywood, that studio side of production. Can you just describe for us what exactly your job entails as a producer?
Yeah, on this particular show, I'm known as a non-writing producer, so I don't do any of the writing, but my responsibility is everything else. I'm involved with pre-production, production from afar, and then most importantly, I'm responsible for completing the show once it's shot in New York through post-production and delivery to CBS. And that involves color correction, mixing, visual effects, music supervision, and everything that really gets it to the person's television or streaming service, however they watch our show.
Oh, so your job's important.
Yeah, I mean, all of our jobs are important, but I'm kind of like the last man on everything. So I don't want to, discredit what the production side does, because they do an amazing job, having to deal with the locations, getting everything in order, getting it done in a timely fashion. But they hand everything over to me, and then it's my responsibility to work with my colleagues to make sure it gets to where the audience can view it and talk about it and enjoy it.
Okay, so you kind of you're the final supervisor on the projects.
Absolutely. I mean, I supervise the editors, the people who do the visual effects, the people who do all of our sound design, the people who do all the final mixing, and ultimately the delivery of the file, which we give to CBS, and CBS broadcasts on Tuesday nights, or they put it on Paramount Plus.
Okay, cool. So on the pre-production side, what do some of your responsibilities look like?
For me, a lot of the pre-production responsibilities would be visual effects, costs, visual effects, development, how we're going to pull some of the things off. Again, I'm not on the set every day the way my colleagues are, but ultimately, in a lot of set pieces we have to make sure that we have the budget to do it. We have the budget to do it, and we have the time, and we have the ability, and have all the manpower here. Besides that, we do go over all the stories, and I give my 2 cents. But again, I pretty much leave that to the directors and the writers to kind of do all that. I just try to compliment when they have questions. How are we going to pull this off? Because a lot of the things we do in today's television shows is visual effects, whether it's cleanup or actually creating those effects.
Got you. Now, obviously, you said that you give that final say to the director and writers in terms of the content of the show. I feel like there's this stereotype of producers that you guys have like final veto power. How true is that? How real is that?
Well, within the world of television, it's not a matter of final veto, but basically in television, a television producer, after they direct one of their episodes, with DGA guidelines, they have 4 to 5 days to work with the editor, and then pretty much they hand over their cut and they move on to the next thing. So then it's up to me to kind of work with all my colleagues and make sure that we are happy with the way the edit looks. And once we lock the edit, we then share it with the network. The network gives us any notes, and then we go and finish the show.
Copy. So I counted, and you are credited with 201 episodes of the FBI universe.
Yeah,
that seems like
it's a lot. I've basically done every single episode of FBI and every episode of International and a few episodes of Most Wanted from the inception. I was basically hired after they shot the pilot, and then I basically delivered the pilot to CBS. And we're going into our 8th season, and I think FBI we've probably done about 150 episodes. International we've done probably about 80 episodes, and Most Wanted, which I only was involved with in the first 2 seasons. That show's probably done about 75 to 80 episodes as well. So yes, I've got my finger on a lot of the FBI universe.
Ooh. What's been the most rewarding part of working on that universe specifically?
I think for me, looking back and seeing the show grow, I mean, it's interesting because sometimes I'm flipping the channels and we have a lot of our shows on Ion, and it's interesting to come across episode 7 from season 1, and I look at it and I watch it for a few minutes and I realize how more sophisticated our graphics are, how more sophisticated our scripts are, how more sophisticated our sets are. I mean, the show has really grown. I mean, I'll never forget doing the first show and thinking, wow, this is an amazing show. But now I look at the finale of season 7 and I see how much the show has grown in every capacity.
That is really cool. And honestly, that's one of the things that I appreciate the most about TV in general, is that you get that arc, right? Like, obviously within an episode, similar to film or plays, it's like there's a beginning, middle, and end. Character starts in one place, ends in another. But the amazing thing about episodic TV is you also have the arc of a season and an arc of a series. So I'm not surprised at all that that's been one of the better experiences for you, is just seeing how the show is transformed over time.
No, and I totally agree. And I think that's what kind of keeps me excited to keep doing more episodes, because we can always get better, get sharper, get a little more edgier, and just, give the audience something different, but within that same DNA.
Yeah. Now, what's been the most challenging part of working on the FBI universe?
I think for me, the most challenging thing was basically we have like 22 little deadlines that we have to hit every Tuesday. Our show is shot very much close to those delivery dates. We're not one of a streaming show, which may shoot 6 months ago and we have 6 months to deliver, and then it just kind of airs. A lot of my episodes I'm delivering to the network just a day or two before they air, just because there's just so much work that needs to be done. And the fact that we do 22 episodes that we have is, as I said, we have these like mini deadlines that we have to hit, 22 times from basically October through the end of May.
Wow. I didn't realize that. There's just so many things that have to get done in like such a short amount of time. And then it's just the process repeats every episode.
Correct. I mean, obviously every episode has its own, challenges that we just have to get to, but it's just, there's only so much time in the month, how many times in the week, and we got to deliver on on that day to air it. We're never pushing an air date. You're never going to turn your TV on Tuesday nights at 8:00 and they're going to not have our show on. It's not going to be a black.
Right.
So basically, which means there have been many weekends that we work through the weekends to get that done, many late nights. So we just make sure, because we really can't not have it. I mean, it's just, there's no, that's not an option.
Right. Oh, no. Yeah. Like that would be crazy. You can't just have like a little screen that pops up. Sorry, due to technical difficulties, there's no new episode of FBI. That would be wild. Are you involved at all in the casting process for,
Not really. I mean, they may ask my opinion or something and do that, but ultimately, no, that's not really in my job description.
Copy. And is that just for the FBI universe or just really all the projects you work
I
on
mean,
that?
I've worked in other shows where I've been more of a producer in a different capacity where we are involved in casting, but within the FBI world, that's a category that's basically left to the executives, the directors, and the actual production producers.
Okay. So let's pivot to maybe one of those other projects because I know obviously for actors, in our own self-interest, getting a look inside of that casting room, and a perspective, like I said, I've had a handful of casting directors on the show, but never a producer who had a hand in casting. Where do you feel your job lies in relation to the casting director?
I mean, for me, in my experiences where I've been at the table with the casting director and the director or other producers, obviously we've hired a casting director who we believe in and we feel like he or she can provide us with the best possible options. And then ultimately there is a certain kind of just kind of chemistry, whether it's a two actors working together and we look at a screen test, and or if it's a single person, the way they do a read. Again, I'm a very collaborative person, and I'm going to volunteer my ideas, but ultimately say, what does the team think? What does the director think? I mean, in feature films, the director really is the person, he or she is the person that's going to make that final decision, typically, because that's really where it is. In television, it's more producers, showrunners, creators of concepts. So when I have worked on smaller indie films, I like I said, I definitely will give my opinion. I'm not someone who's not going to give an opinion, but I will also kind of, step back and say to the director, to to he or she, who do you think is going to get you that performance that you need, because they've either they've written the script or they've taken ownership in that script, and they need to have a vision of who's going to be able to really bring that character to life.
Mm. Well, that perspective sounds very similar to what a casting director would have as far as their input is concerned. As a producer, is there a concern about box office draw? When you consider different actors auditioning, or is there consideration of like, oh, well, this person has XYZ following on socials? Does that factor in at all?
I mean, that's a newer thing, and I'll be honest, it's never been a deciding factor for me. I feel like you really want to get the actor or the actress or the actor, should say, that can really bring that character to life, because until that point, it's been sitting on the page. And whether the writer or director did it or just the writer, then it's up to the collective, team to get it from a written medium to a visual medium. And I just feel like at the end of the day, you want that actor or actress who can actually bring it to life.
Boom. I love it. So once the actor's been cast and maybe everybody in the room agrees enough to cast him, I won't say fully agrees because I'm sure there's some, times where there's not a full agreement, but this actor's on set, they're doing the job. In your experience, those actors who you've most had an appreciation for maybe on set, what are the qualities that they have in common? Like the common denominator between those actors who show up and do the work that makes you as a producer proud and excited to have made that decision.
And again, this is very subjective, but in my opinion, it's someone who takes direction well, who also takes chances, and also is collaborative with their other actors. Because again, and similar to a sports analogy, you're only good as the people around you. And so I think actors need to kind of understand who they're acting with, understand their strengths and weaknesses, and either bring people up or tell them how they can bring themselves up. And that to me has always been the sign of a good actor, but also a collaborative actor. And I think that's something that that might be overlooked in today's acting world. Is you have to be a collaborative team player, because making movies is not easy. It's a grind. You're there all day long, day in and day out. And, you really have to kind of not only want it, but you've got to make the people around you want it just as well.
Mm. You remind me of something one of my college directors mentioned to us. We were doing a production of Othello. And of course, everybody wants to be the lead, right? And so he's talking about what it means to be cast as a lead. And he's like, well, they call it a lead for a reason, and it's that sense of you need to be a leader in the space, right? You talk about this collaboration, and it's being the example that other people can follow or other people gravitate towards, and like being the first person to show up, being that first person who's off book, etc. And just really not just having your performance focus on, oh, I hope I look good, but again, how can I affect everyone around me?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you've just, from what you said is perfectly right. Being first on the call sheet, being a leader is not just being the best person in that scene, but also making everybody else as good as they can be. And that's really an important thing. And, again, I've never had the fortune to work with the great actors, but that's what I hear when you talk about people who have, whether it's a Denzel Washington I can't think of it, but I mean, they're just
my man, Chadwick Boseman.
Exactly. They're people that, make other people excited to show up to work and do their best work.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Now, what is something that you wish actors better understood about your job as a producer? I feel like there's this, I'll speak for myself. Producers feel like we know they exist, but they feel distant from us. It's like we typically not as, I guess you'd say, forward facing as some of the other roles in the industry. Even casting directors, when I first graduated from college, I felt like casting directors were these big, like, people up here. But then after like a year in the business, I was like, oh, it's not like that. However, producers have always felt like, oh no, they're over here, we're over here. And I see them sometimes like in producer callbacks, and they're just sitting in suits and they're sitting in the back. And I'm like, I don't know who this person is.
I mean, again, I feel like that they need to you have to really kind of interact with those people. Sorry. When I go to the set, when I go to New York to go to the set, I just like to hang out with the actors and understand that I'm there to support them and help them, because I know what they're doing is very challenging and what I'm doing is very far from them. But I want them to know that I'm supportive of what they're doing, whether it's fixing their audio, whether it's making them look better through, visual effects, making them look cooler through visual effects. I'm there to, to help them give the best performance they can. And I feel like the more that they know that, the more comfortable they are with letting go of some of those, stigmas or some of those, concerns they have.
Mm. This may relate to something I've asked earlier, but I'm going to ask anyway because it may get a different response. You just made me think, you're saying, oh, what can I do to make the actor's performance better? What can actors do to make your job easier?
I just feel like that sometimes stay through the scene, stay through the cut, stay in character longer. One of the things that we really struggle with is we'd love for our actors to not just once the camera says cut, just to go back to who they are. There's always great nuances, facial expressions, body language that we kind of can pick up on, even though the camera's quote cut. There's still great things there, and I just kind of live that character throughout that whole scene or that whole experience. It's beneficial to us on the post side because it gives us all kinds of little nuggets to find.
And that's the part that's not in the script.
Correct. Those are all things that I think just instinctually certain actors, similar to like certain athletes, do certain things. It just becomes more instinctive or natural, or they learn it and they train themselves to do it. And I think the only way they train like that is they get the feedback and they understand the feedback and they try to really not take it as criticism, but they take it as feedback.
Heard. Okay. So as I said at the top, your resume is ridiculously impressive. How did you come to producing?
For me, it was more about, I wanted to I started out first coming to Cal, like when I came to LA after college, I felt like I just wanted to be involved in everything. And it took me a couple of years to figure out, to kind of hone that down. I knew I wasn't a writer and I knew I wasn't going to be a director, but I didn't know what producing really was. So I did all kinds of different things on the set. And I really realized that the job that was most intriguing to me was this kind of quarterback, because that's how I kind of perceive being a producer. It's kind of different in television than it is in film, but you're kind of involved in everything. And, I know people like to say, you're not a master of one thing, but a jack of many trades. I really like that because I'm a real problem solver by nature. Someone tells me a story that there's a problem. I don't go, oh, I'm sorry, you can't fix that. I try to instinctually give them a solution. And being a producer is a solution driven job because nothing ever goes your way. The day doesn't take, the day takes longer. The weather throws you a loop. There's something wrong with your equipment. Your actor doesn't want to do that. your location doesn't work. So you have to be able to stay cool and stay calm and try to figure out a solution that's going to try to hit as many of the boxes as you can at that moment. And that's what really intrigued me about producing. And I slowly over time, kind of learned how to do that. And my first intro to that was like really being on the post side. I was on the production side, but I realized I didn't want to do that all the time. And what I loved about post was you were had the ability to kind of manipulate what was given to you and make it better. And it's a real problem solving kind of part of the thing, because when you're shooting production, sometimes it's like, as they say, it's kind of like a runaway train and you just got to deal with what you have. And post, I really can take a breath and look at it and go, wow, what if we flip flop these scenes? What if we add something else to the scene that was never conceived about? There's lots of options, and obviously technology has increased that ability immensely, but we can manipulate it in a positive way, but it's a real problem solving type of environment. And that's what really gets me, excited about doing.
I can tell as you started describing it, I could see the excitement building in you as you were thinking about.
I mean, it's the one thing I sometimes say to people. I still can't believe they get, I hate to say it. I mean, I'm surprised that people here, I really am surprised they get paid to do what I do, because I really do love it. I don't really find it as a job. It really is a real love.
Wow. That's amazing. And so as you made the transition from post to a more prominent position on the production end, was there a phase of like shadowing somebody, or was it just one day an opportunity came along and someone was like, hey, Alec, like, we want you for this. We're going to take that leap.
I think it was a combination of two. I grew, I got more responsibility. I got more trusted. And like you said, I got an opportunity. I mean, I had never done network television before. I had done, FBI. I'd done pilots for networks. I'd done other things, but it was really a real big break of someone saying, hey, we trust you. We know you can do this. And I was scared when I first started doing it. And over time, I got more comfortable. And now I have a good scare, but I'm much more comfortable, and I know what I can do and what needs to be done. And I stay very calm and very, cool about it.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And sometimes, it just takes that one opportunity, for somebody to say, hey, I believe in you. And then it leads to X, Y, and Z. And I think I don't want to speak for all actors, but I'm kind of representing actors on the show. It's like, that's the piece where I feel like I haven't seen, I haven't had that close relationship with producers yet, where you can see like, hey, their path isn't so crazily different from ours. Like somebody still had to take a chance. We think about the producers like, oh, they have all this power, and sure, maybe like you get to that point. But we ought to start somewhere.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody gets a break, and it's just a question of how do you handle that break? Some people stumble, some people succeed. It doesn't mean you won't get another break if you stumble, but when you get that opportunity, you really have to seize that moment and just be smart and just really take your time and do it the best you can. And there's a little bit of luck involved in this game. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I mean, I've had a TV show that's been on the air for now going into our 8th season. We have really, really, excellent ratings. We have fans all across the world, and it's really been a fun journey. And hopefully it won't end anytime soon.
Hopefully not. Hopefully not. How are you feeling about the future of television? I feel like there's all this talk about like the death of network television. Streaming is king. How does that feel in your position, where you're kind of in charge of like bringing these things to life and making them happen?
I mean, it is I am concerned. I think that we might see this kind of time where things will start to revert a little bit. I mean, network TV is still a very strong player. I mean, we, like FBI example, we get 6 million people watching our show on a weekly basis. I mean, streaming shows are big, but, they don't have those kinds of numbers. And I think it's just a matter of the market trying to figure out how to monetize linear television or network television. It was a very simple process back in the day where advertisers did this and that gave the money to do it. Advertisers are a little leery because I think network, overall the numbers are smaller, but they're still very, concise, and that we do have a lot of people. So I think I'm hoping with a little bit of consolidation over the next couple of years, network television will have kind of a second life per se, where people will start to realize that, there is value in it, and, the networks can get the advertisers to kind of come back to the table in the way they used to be.
That's a fresh perspective that I feel like I haven't heard people really talk about, is kind of like a regression to the mean. It's like network used to be king, streaming came along, the pendulum swung all the way over here. But in reality, as you're saying it, I'm like, yeah, I don't really differentiate between network TV shows and streaming TV shows. I watch the show that I think's good.
Exactly. And as long as as long as good content's out there, people will find you. I think also streaming is very bifurcated, to where network television is still, there's four networks that people want to watch. And, I mean, maybe it's wishful thinking, but I'm hoping that there will be kind of a renaissance of that, and that the advertisers will realize that there are a lot of eyeballs on network linear television.
Yeah. Now, outside of FBI, are there other projects that, you're interested in tackling at this time?
No, right now I'm just really focused on, on FBI. It takes up all my time, and just really making sure that that's the best show that we can put on the air every week. I guess we used to be on, I was stumbling because we used to be on Tuesday nights, and now we're moving to Monday nights. So I will say that we're going to be airing on Monday nights now. So I should say every Monday night, the best FBI episode we can put on. And I'm excited about that. We just started shooting today. So we have our 8th season. We start airing episodes October 13th. And I think it's going to be a great year.
Congratulations on season 8. That's insane. 8 seasons.
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember when I started this show, I thought, maybe, we'll see how long it lasts. And it's amazing that we're, closing in on 200 episodes soon. It's amazing.
God, that is insane. Especially during a time where we have streaming and YouTube, which, you're talking about advertisers. I mean, so many ad dollars are being pumped into YouTube. I think upfronts this year, YouTube was kind of the main player at the table when it comes to, to ad spending. So to have a show that's continuing to work and continuing to attract an audience of 6 million people a week, that's insane. That's something to be proud of.
Yeah, no, we're super proud of the show, and I think we have a really loyal audience, and I'm hoping that they will follow us to Monday nights, and we're going to continue to deliver really good, exciting weekly, episodic television for them.
Yeah. Now, why the change to Monday night?
I'm not sure why CBS did it exactly, but they just decided that, looking at their overall schedule, that it was a better fit for us to be on Monday nights now.
Okay, so that was a studio call. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious. It's not something I was like, I wanted did something free up, or did they think that I wonder if their viewership numbers have anything to do with where we're placing content.
I'm sure there's very, demographics and things, but when CBS gets their schedule, they kind of look at it and they decided that this was going to be a better home for us. So, or I should say a better time slot. So we're going to be on Monday nights at 9 p.m.
Heard. All right. You heard it, folks. Monday nights, 9 p.m. Tune in. On the show, I love to discuss those things that allow us to sustain ourselves in this industry. It's hard. I mean, I feel like I'm reminded every week of great reasons to quit, as pessimistic as that sounds. And I'm actually a super optimistic person. And a guest asked me what's your special thing? Because I always ask the actors on the show, what's that quality that separates you? And somebody asked me, and I was like, I can't give up. That tenacity is something that differentiates me. But it is hard. It's hard for a multitude of reasons. And so for someone who's been in the business for decades at this point, Alec, what would you say is the thing to cultivate in order to sustain oneself, in order to be in it for the long game?
I mean, for me, it's flexibility, willing to look at all kinds of options. I've done many things in my career, but also, like you, I don't like to lose. I don't like to give up. I'm a very tenacious person. And again, being a problem solver, when you give me a solution, if there's a problem, I'm going to find a solution. And it's just a matter of, really taking a breath, stepping back and looking at it and go, how are we going to make this work? Because there's always a solution. There's pros and cons to all those decisions, but ultimately there's always a solution, and you got to figure that out.
There's always a solution. That sounds like a great title for this episode. I love it. Alec, thank you so much. I mean, I know how valuable your time is, and I genuinely can't tell you how impactful it is to me when I reached out for you to say, yeah, let's do it. It means a lot. And I'm grateful to have had you on the show and grateful to have heard your insight. And I'm sure for the folks listening at home, this is going to be incredibly valuable.
Well, I appreciate you having me. It's very exciting. And I wish you good luck with the new distribution of the podcast. And if you ever want to have me on again, you just let me know.
Amazing. Alrighty, folks. Thank you so much for tapping into this episode of The Actor's Instrument. If you enjoyed this conversation with Alec, then you'll love a recent interview I did with indie producer Becky Morrison. So be sure to check that out. Guys, if you're not already, please give us a follow or subscribe. It helps out a ton. Shout out to our new distributors over at Next Chapter Podcasts, and we'll be back next Tuesday. Till next time, y'all. Peace.